So today in class we talked about um, how we can use questioning to understand what a question or a problem is asking you to do. It helps us break apart perhaps the content or the demands of the question or problem. So let's just throw out a problem or question. We'll do, um, let's see, how were post-classical empires influenced by the classical period? So here's our question. To respond to that, we need some more information. To know what we need, we actually have to think about our thought process and the kinds of questions that we're asking about this question. So the first one we might start with is, a what do we need to know question. So how about what were post-classical empires like? And what were their basic characteristics? Likewise, we're going to want to ask the same thing about the classical empires, right? So, same thing about classical empires, right? So, once we have both profiles, the classical empires, the post-classical empires, the next thing is we're going to need to know where the influence is coming from. So to do that, we're going to maybe do a comparison. How were they similar? Right? And if you're going to ask how they were similar, you might also want to ask how they were different. For example, the post-classical, we saw an update in law with Justinian's Code, which comes from the classical period. It's actually like right around the turning point, the late 6th century that's actually happening. But it comes from the 12 tables, the Roman 12 tables. So that's an example of how you might compare post-classical government practice, or in this case law, to where it comes from in the classical, the 12 tables, if you're looking for specific examples. But how are they similar and how are they different? That example right there, 12 tables versus Justinian's Code, will give you plenty for how they were similar, how they were different. And kids, this is your analysis. This is analysis. You're looking at the parts and you're saying these parts are this way, those parts are that way. They connect in these other ways, and this is how we know that, right? That might be another question you write. How do we know that? How do we know that Justinian's Code is similar or different to the 12 tables? It's kind of problematic, but you might find sources about the 12 tables that are based on historical accounts, or perhaps they were legal briefings, journals of judges or magistrates from the Roman Empire. I'm sure there's lots to sift through. I'm not a Roman classical expert, not even close, right? Not even the same ball game. But that's kind of where I might look if I were to look for that. How do we know this question? So that's really it. Besides the fact that you need to focus on this piece right here, the influence. So you have the content. You have the content of the two questions, and then you have the demands of the question, the influence. To be able to figure out how they're influenced, you need to compare them. So our skill here is comparison. Our historical thinking skill is comparison, even though it doesn't actually say compare how empires in the post-classical were to classical period. It's still essentially what you're going to end up doing, and we only arrived at that by looking at these questions that we wrote.